then you would start coming up with hypotheses why that is the case. Now let's look at the data one more time. So now this is the balance of payments. This is the Swiss current account. This is the financial account without reserves. And you see that while Switzerland in all categories except for reserves increased its assets, it reduced its reserves. So the overall financial account is the sum of this and that. Now that in turn gives I cannot scribble on that screen. I'm not allowed to. But you see that the financial account is roughly as high as the current account balance, and you see that the difference is net earnings and omissions. Now in Norway you see that forget about reserves, they didn't change. Forget about the capital account. By the way, the capital account is 0 in all of those countries, close to it. So forget about it. Don't ever confuse it with the financial account. Don't, right? I'll turn angry if you do while I'm around. You see that Norway, the current account balance is positive, the financial account balance is positive, the financial account being a bit higher, and that gives rise to net earnings and omissions. So net earnings and omissions are computed once we have all the other things, and we say, okay, it doesn't fit, so we compute net earnings and omissions to plug it in. Chile, negative current account, financial account without reserves being negative, reserves going up, so you have to add these two things. That makes the overall financial account a bit shorter, and net earnings and omissions are not very large. For Uganda, you see current account negative, financial account excluding reserves negative. What we essentially say is, in 2023, Uganda financed a current account deficit by incurring liabilities. In the broadest sense, we know that these are very different liabilities. It's FDI type liabilities, it is other investment, but these are all liabilities. So it's like Britain running a current account by selling less referee whistles than buying cars and incurring liabilities to compensate Germany. And please, and tell that to the American president and his entourage if you ever meet these guys. Running a current account deficit means that someone is giving you stuff that's valuable, and you're giving the other country promises, nothing more. Right? That's the essence of current account deficit. It's not mean. It's not the United States being ripped off. If you ever want to engage in that language, it is actually other countries producing stuff that Americans can use and consume, and what they get in turn is pieces of paper or numbers on bank accounts. Okay, I try to not exaggerate my assessment of the current political disaster taking place in the United States, but I have to clarify a few issues. And one of the issues is that, this is a guy who grew up on the real estate market in New York, and that's all he knows. Let's face it. This is not a competent economist. Now, he thinks surplus is good because surplus sounds better than deficit. But a current account surplus is not necessarily a good thing. Current account deficit is not necessarily a good thing either. But the goal of this course is to train you in being competent, more competent than the American president. Good. Okay, so this is the balance of payments of Germany. Let's look at the numbers, and let's keep this, because if there's some more students coming in the afternoon, they will see what we did in the morning, drawing pictures. Okay, so let's look at Germany. Let me erase, probably misspelled anyway, my T. So Germany's current account balance in 2023. Actually, we have data for 2024. The P means preliminary, right? Because it's all, this is from the monthly report March 25. So now interestingly, we don't know exactly yet what was the current account balance in all these figures. So let's look at these numbers. These are in millions of. Here's a funny thing, right? It's all in English, but this is the German word for time. Zeit. Okay. I don't know whether they didn't completely translate it. Anyway, so what about the German current account balance in 2024? Was it positive or negative? It's an easy question, right? 248 billion, actually, or 248,708 million euros, which turns it roughly 248 billion. Actually 249. So let me DOI is Germany, 2024 is the year, so we have 248,708. 708 mio euros. Okay, now where does this come from? Well, if you look at goods, you see that Germany in 2024 exported much more goods than it imported, so the value was much bigger. Actually, you see that it's quite enormous. So you have goods being 239.0 million euros. What about services? By the way, before we forget about this column. It's unimportant. End of story, right? It drives students nuts and they want to know exactly what that is. I think I have, that's, for example, warehouse transactions for the account of residence, deductions of goods returned, and deductions of exports and imports in connection with goods for person. I don't know what that is, to be frank. And I think I don't have to know. Important thing I have to know is this is of which, so what matters is this number, right? And it's just a memo item. So what about services? Did Germany export or import more services? Right. Does that surprise you? Okay, good. I mean, the way I asked the question sounds like it shouldn't surprise you. Do you have any clue why Germany imported more services than exported, or what type of service Germany imports? Healthcare, perhaps? Yeah. There's data on that, right? You can go to the next pages and you get. And there's one thing that the Germans love to do. Well, there's a lot of things we love to do, but travel. In fact, people living in Germany, they travel a lot. And this is the big thing in the services part. So this is, and you see it when you go to the COVID years of 2020, 2029. Why was the services account positive? Because Germans couldn't travel. So they didn't travel abroad, so they didn't spend money on whatever, French meals and Spanish hotel beds and Vietnamese whatever, pho soup. So they stayed at home. And so all of a sudden in 2020, 2021, this was positive. And then when restrictions were lifted again, they started traveling again. And going abroad means you're importing tourism services. So this is the import of tourism services. It's not just that, there's other stuff as well. Logistics. I think when it comes to logistics, Germany exports more than it imports. But funnily and oddly, it's really the tourism is a big issue. Now, primary income is gigantic for Germany. So really talking about, we're talking about 153,717 million euros. Now, given that German GDP is roughly 4,000 billion, 150 or 154 billion is quite a lot, right? So German primary income is a big entry. Secondary income is minus 63,859. Oops. Million euros. And if you add this, if you add these numbers, you can do it using your smartphone. It should add up to the number that you have down here. Sometimes you have rounding errors, right? But right, you add this and this and this and this, and you get the current account balance of Germany. And please note, for Germany, again, it would be foolish to say the current account balance is just net exports, because primary income in Germany is huge, right? And ignoring this and neglecting it would be just very, very wrong. Okay, let's look at the capital account. The capital account in Germany in 2024 was actually not that small. It was minus 19,892 million euros. Okay. Now, if you add that, you get, and I should have done that before, but I can do it live. I used to say that people should use their calculators, but of course that's ridiculous. People are using their smartphones. You just add these numbers. So 248,708 minus 19,892, and you get 222,816. Right? Okay, what was the financial account? And I'm done in what is the balance on the financial account in 2024 in Germany? Actually, you don't see it. It's this thing, this number. Let me use still another color. The financial account in Germany was 270,630, 270,623 million euros. Okay, is this the same number as that? No. Okay. Before we deal with that, what does that tell you about the change of Germany's assets and liabilities vis-a-vis the rest of the world? Did assets increase by more than liabilities, or was it the other way around? The assets increased by more. So the story that emerges is Germany ran that huge current account surplus. The capital account was negative, but it's small change compared to this, right? So on the left-hand side, we have this big number. So on the right-hand side, so it's not surprising that at the time when Germany was running a current account surplus, which was not undone by the capital account surplus, financial assets increased by more than liabilities. So it is the cars and referee whistle thing, right? Germany exporting more than importing and getting claims assets in exchange. Now the sad thing is these numbers do not match. So what's the difference? Let me check. Yep. let me net aerosol emissions of Germany in 2024 were just what is it? 4180. 8 millions of euros. Okay, there's a rounding error because if you see that, I mean, that should be 41,807. I mean, where do rounding errors come from? Let me give you an example. What is 1.4 plus 1.4 plus 1.4? It's 4.2. Now, if you say this is close to 1, this is close to 1, this is close to 1, and you add that, you get 3. This is where rounding errors come from, right? I mean, this is not PhD level mathematics, but it's something that we have to remind ourselves. And these things pop up here. The bottom line is, that's the last thing I'll bother you with it before the lunch break. Oops, those red pens are dangerous. The bottom line is the German current account balance plus the German capital account balance should be equal to the financial account balance in Germany, but it's not. And so what you do is you introduce those net errors and omissions, and then that's the logic. And of course, the people at the Bundesbank who are responsible for these errors and omissions, they hate it, right? Because this shows how that they are wrong somewhere in the system, but they can't do anything about it, right? It's just and so this is what I want to tell you about the balance of payments. We'll go now. The change of plan is that I'll continue with this presentation in the afternoon. I thought I'd be done by now, but I'm not. It is important. It also, I think, it sets the stage. And so let me continue, and then in the last part of the afternoon we'll do that problem set together, and then we're done. And we go into the intertemporal model tomorrow. Okay, so I'll be back at 1. See you then.